My name's Tyler Adam, and firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that my site and this presentation take place on the unceded ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I'm working with T-Swamp Park, thus named for the Rhododendron columbianum and the peat bogs that used to characterize this landscape. The issue I chose to work with was how COVID-19 has compounded already prevalent issues of nutrition, activity, and socialization in Vancouver. This effect is felt more strongly in seniors and even more so in the winter months, where weather can impose an additional barrier to activity and socialization. The concept was to design a garden that ameliorates these nutritional deficits in sedentary lifestyles, particularly for the elderly, and offers year-round appeal. This is my program. With that established, these are the things I wanted to include in the site's design. On top of this, I wanted to offer space for social opportunity. Because my demographic is vulnerable to Alzheimer's and dementia, I also wanted to design with principles that ameliorates those symptoms, like rich colors, familiar scents, increased apparent size, and enclosure. I also considered as how the senses senesce, smell has the longest longevity. And with that, I created my hierarchy, scent as the most important. I also considered, aside from the visual characteristics, I also selected plants for other sensory attributes. In this case, grasses as they play with the wind and the rain and the ficus carica. In the initial iterations, I grappled with site layout. The garden position was ultimately optimal in the north, the bosques on the eastern side, and the berms on the south, shielding it from the streets. In the latter iterations, form came together. For the garden, I wanted to find a means to maximize surface area to volume to address access issues. The form was ultimately this dendritic form on the bottom right, and that's the motif I'd play with throughout. The site is situated in residential with a playground to the north, rich moist soils, a vestige of the peat bogs. It has a slight northern aspect, and it is near important thoroughfares. I wanted to create a space for the seniors to feel safe, for them to feel like they have ownership and control and provide a place they could perceive as defensible. Arriving at the park, the vantage is obscured by a pergola flooded with growing red grapevines, a row of proud pseudocamellia, and a dignified ginkgo that burns yellow in the clear autumn skies. Clearing the shade provided by the grapes, two berms of Gentista pilosa spill into the landing. The vantage opens as the landscape drops away. A basin enters view, and a pond and a rectilinear garden beyond. To the right, refuge can be found in the woods. To the left, benches tucked into the berm that shields the park from the avenue. In the summer, the bosque would greet with the smell of apple blossoms. From the southeast and the northern fence, chamomile. From the southwest, elderberry. The muted concrete paths contrast with the greens, pinks, whites, and yellows of the park. Circumnavigating the pond reveals dragonflies as they flit deftly across the surface, and chickadees who sit vigilant in the snowbell as you pass. Upon closer inspection, the garden is bustling in anticipation of harvest. Hats atop heads of white hair duck and weave behind seemingly prolific patches of pumpkin or tomato. The beds are set back into the earth and snugly between the orchard to its right and the back fence, similarly draped with grapes. A patio extends out over the small pool from which to watch couples picnicking in the clover meadow as a white-haired woman begins to set the table. Because the site would see increased activity in the summer and fall, those were the seasons I wanted to focus appeal in. My color palette is rich yellows, reds, pinks, whites, with an emphasis on edible plants to maximize forage. Autumn color provided by the ginkgo and katsura, among others, and winter appeal by the salix, witch hazel, hellebores, and arrowwood. This is my massing and spatial diagrams. Lots of ground cover and barrier. An elderly community gets their hands dirty. Engaging with the landscape. My materiality, lighting, seating embedded in the berms, minimalist railings to not obscure the views, grippy, even pathways, and lots of shade to prevent glare. My precedents and inspirations, I wanted to evoke a wet meadow ecosystem as a callback to the bog. Thank you.